Massive recruiting news out of this past weekend for the Noles, starting with five-star defensive lineman Armondo Blount out of Miami Central High School. Blount was actually a Miami commit and a member of the 2025 recruiting class coming into the weekend, but took a visit to Florida State for the Duke game, and then the next day not only flipped his commitment from the Hurricanes to the Noles, but also reclassified to the 2024 class. So he's a kid that can sign with Florida State in December, and even said he has plans to early enroll along with a lot of other Florida State commits. This commitment also moves Florida State up to number 4 in the 247 team recruiting rankings, and they're inching closer to that top 5, that top 3, top 5 kind of class that we've been talking about. Now let's take a step back. Like I said, Blunt was formerly a recruit in the 2025 class, but Florida State has still been on him for a while, and it was even thought, and I think he even said, that Florida State was the leader for him at one point. So we were already looking to have a really strong start to the 25 class, along with a really, really good class in 2024. Then he takes a visit to Miami and pretty much commits immediately after. Now this was a sting considering his size. I mean, he's coming in already at 6'3", 250 pounds. His talent, I mean, he's only a junior, but he's dominating the talent at Miami Central High School in an area that has some of the most competitive high school football in the entire country. So when he went to Miami, it was a miss, and it was a bit irritating. Now, I'm sure NIL was involved in this, and these are kids that are young and super impressionable, so his commitment to Miami was likely just a little bit of an impulsive decision, kind of based off a visit high. I think he's always felt at home with FSU, and his mom has always openly said she preferred FSU, and as we all know, winning the moms is a key part to recruiting. Of course, Miami didn't go down in this one without a fight, and of course, they resorted to shady methods to try to prevent this flip. We were hearing the first murmurs of this potential flip happening throughout early last week. There was smoke of him visiting for the Duke game, and this is kind of where rumors of a flip started to kind of swirl. I think the Florida State side of things, they were trying to keep it sort of quiet, but in today's world, that's almost impossible. He did indeed show up to the Duke game Saturday night and spent most of Sunday there before ultimately leaving committed to the Noles, which I think was the goal for Mike Norvell and the staff. Sounds to me like Miami got wind of all this and started to kind of go on defense. I heard they were texting the kids some pretty rough stuff, kind of negative recruiting Florida State in a way, and I think it did cause a bit of a hiccup in the scenario of him flipping and almost pushed it back. But luckily, this all happened while he was actually still on campus, so Florida State and the staff were able to kind of get it handled immediately in person, smooth things out, and still get him on board. Now, of course, landing a five-star defensive lineman is always huge, especially because we've all been kind of asking to see an uptick in defensive line recruiting recently. And it's even sweeter to be able to spurn Miami and flip him from a hated rival. But I think it's also important to look at the scope of this one. I don't think anyone knew for sure that Armondo Blount was going to flip and reclassify. And the staff was also awaiting a decision from another five-star defensive lineman in LJ McCray, who we talked about quite a bit on this channel. Now, unfortunately, LJ McCray decided to choose the Florida Gators, and that was a tough pill to swallow. FSU made a really good push there for him at the end, but for most of that recruitment, it seemed like UF led, and they ultimately did end up landing him. Now, Florida State won't stop recruiting LJ, but to miss on a kid like that and then the very next day turn around and flip one is impressive, and it shows that the staff is making sure that they get players. You know, you miss on one five-star, you turn around and you land another one. Now, obviously, it would have been great to land both of them, but you can't win them all. But I do think it shows how far the program has come from getting embarrassed and sort of shell-shocked on signing day a few years ago, where a lot of guys such as Travis Hunter all ended up going elsewhere, and Florida State was caught off guard by it. So they easily could have just remained in their confidence from McCray and not pursued a flip from Blunt, or at least not pursued it as heavily as they did. But they weren't going to be caught off guard this time, and they were going to make sure they landed at least one five-star this weekend. I cannot wait to see this kid get into Tallahassee, get into Josh Storm's conditioning and training, and I'd be willing to bet that Armondo Blunt is going to be an early impact guy for FSU. So very excited for him, and again, so awesome to see him burn Miami here. And honestly, I don't even think we're done there yet. I still think four-star defensive lineman Artavius Jones is on flip watch. He did make it back into Tallahassee for the second week in a row to watch the Duke game. And I think it's only a matter of time before he also flips his commitment to FSU, adding to what's already a really, really nice 2024 class. Now, I know people get a bitter taste in their mouth for kids who flip their commitments, and especially in the new world of NIL, college recruiting is almost like the Wild West, and that makes everyone hesitant to feel confident on really any recruit. So, for what it's worth, I do think he's locked in. I know it's all meaningless until they sign the letter of intent, but I think he knows Florida State is where he wants to be. I think it's where he's always wanted to be. It's where he'll get developed, and being the final stretch, getting his commitment this close to signing day, I do think he signs with Florida State in December. Again, a great way to end another good weekend. You beat a really good ranked Duke team to improve to 7-0 for the first time in almost a decade, and then you capped off Sunday by flipping a 5-star defensive lineman from an in-state rival. It doesn't get much better than that. I feel like I'm saying this a lot lately, but it really is a great time to be a Florida State fan, and it seems like recruits are getting in on the action as well. As always, like, subscribe, and let's talk Noles.